Everyone, please welcome Tom Mullen.
Thank you. You know, having heard some of the great ideas already, I know that you've heard some things today about the Constitution and the exercise of federal power outside the powers delegated in that document to the federal government. One of the reasons that we're here today. And back when we were arguing, as much argument as there really was about the present health care bill, I was going around speaking and saying to people, and I'll ask you the same question, how many in favor of the health care bill that was recently passed on the federal level, by a show of hands? Nobody. And my next question is, well, what's wrong with it? Why can't the government pass this law? And the answer that I usually get is, well, it's not authorized by the Constitution, which is correct. So the question after that has to be, well, okay, what if we passed an amendment that said that the federal government does have the power to run a health care program and that it should? Would that make it okay? No. So the Constitution doesn't have much to do with it. And I'm not here to knock the Constitution. It's a good document so long as it secures our rights. But our nation was not founded with the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution came 13 years after we were a nation with the federal government. In fact, the Articles of Confederation, which were our first written Constitution, weren't even there for the first 3 or 4 years after the Declaration of Independence. So the Declaration of Independence really was the document that said we are a new nation and that these 13 colonies are now 13 independent states. And there were some ideas in there that said, here's why we're no longer going to be part of Great Britain. And we're going to form our own 13 separate governments, and to the extent that we're going to cooperate with each other, here's what this new federal government is going to do. And we hear some things in the Declaration about the law of nature and the laws of nature and of nature's God. And I want to focus really on that today because it's something we don't really talk a lot about. Because we know that the Constitution was written by men, and we haven't found a perfect man or woman yet, unless there's one here. Show of hands, any perfect people here? Okay. Not enough for a majority in the Congress, unfortunately. So, if the Constitution doesn't tell us what our rights are, then what does? In fact, it says that one of our inalienable rights is the right to liberty. But what is liberty? You know, if you ask our politicians, George Bush, he'll give you an answer. Barack Obama will give you an answer. Hillary Clinton will be giving her answer again in the next presidential election. Which one of them is right? If you said none of them, then you were very warm. In fact, that's the situation we find ourselves in today. I want to make the point that that situation is no different than it was in 1776. You had the same arguments. What is freedom really? What are our rights? And where do they come from? Thomas Jefferson had one opinion. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. His rival, Alexander Hamilton, had quite a different opinion. Thought a whole different philosophy about where our rights come from, what freedom is, what the role of government is, and what powers the government should exercise. So we had an argument right from the beginning about what this federal government is supposed to do. And Jefferson, in the last year of his life, actually, just to make sure that there was no confusion, passed this resolution. It was the board of the University of Virginia. And this resolution was passed saying, resolved, that it is the opinion of this board that as to the general principles of liberty and the rights of man in nature and in society, the doctrines of Locke in his essay concerning the true, original, extent, and end of civil government, and of Sidney in his discourses of government, may be considered as those generally approved by our fellow citizens of this and the United States. Why would he do that? I mean, this is the former president of the United States, founded the university, busy guy, invented that thing where there's two pens writing at the same time. Why would he take the time to pass a resolution that said that? Because he wanted to make sure that the American philosophy, the one that dominated in 1776 and not so much in 1825, or at least it was being challenged by 1825, endured. So he cites two men, Locke and this guy Sidney. And to get around a long academic discussion, I'll say this. Locke wrote two treatises of government, the first and the second. He cites the second one here. And Sidney's Discourse on Government, Locke's first treatise and Sidney's second basically said, I'm going to refute the ideas about absolute monarchy and the divine right of kings put across by this guy named Sir Robert Filmer, which thankfully are no longer considered very seriously. So what did he say in the second essay? In the second essay he said, well, okay, if there's no divine right of kings, and that's not the right way to go, then how do we figure out what the government's supposed to do? And I'm going to share a few passages from his essay, that second one, cited in Jefferson's resolution. After a little introduction, it starts out chapter 1 like this. To understand political power right and derive it from its original, we must consider what state all men are naturally in, and that is a state of perfect freedom to order their actions and dispose of their possessions and persons as they see fit, within the bounds of the law of nature, without asking leave or depending upon the will of any other man. A state also of equality, wherein all the power and jurisdiction is reciprocal, no one having more than another, there being nothing more evident than that creatures of the same species and rank, promiscuously born to all the same advantages of nature and use of the same faculties, should also be equal one amongst another without subordination or subjection. So there's two very important ideas. Number one, that our equality is evident. In other words, you can observe it directly. It needs no proof. Locke was one of the first empiricists. And he said that you need to observe things in nature and then you can draw conclusions from your reason. And the first conclusion that he drew from our natural equality, this is the state without government, the state of nature, is that we're in a state of perfect liberty, which means we can do anything we want within the bounds of the law of nature. Another idea that we find in the Declaration of Independence. So, when Jefferson wrote down, we hold these truths to be self-evident, he was thinking of this passage here, which he later in life cited as the source of his philosophy. And the second idea is that there is a natural limit to our liberty. That without any government, there is a law of nature that governs what we can do and what we can't do and still be in a state of perfect freedom. But what is it? What's the law of nature? As many opinions about that as there were about freedom, even back in the 1600s. So if you believe Jefferson, then you would accept Locke's definition, and he says, the state of nature has a law of nature to govern it, which obliges everyone, and reason, which is that law, teaches all mankind